My name is Michał Puzyński and I work for Community Council for Somerset, where we run a project called Somerset Diverse Communities. So in general, we support BAME communities in Somerset, small associations, informal groups and charities. And we, as you probably already know, BAME communities, they face a number of different challenges. And one of them, well, employment rights, it's one of the most important fields for the migrant workers. And it is at work where we spend 1/3 of our time or even more. And we have heard a number of different stories about the incompatibilities at the workplace, or simply abuse, but due to the language barrier, cultural differences, or lack of knowledge about available support, people usually accept the unfair treatment, if you like. And we also realize that when we talk to people and when we're telling them about potential organization that could help, there's some kind of misperception of what they do. And therefore, we decided to invite the great guest speakers tonight to talk about the employment rights. And but before I will introduce our guests, please let me to just say a big thank you to Somerset Community Foundation and Hinkley Point C Fund for making tonight's meeting possible. Yes, so tonight we've got someone from Citizens Advice Bureau, Karuna. Karuna, please forgive me if my pronunciation will be wrong, but Karuna Tharmananthar, is that right?
Yep, perfect.
And he's a volunteer advisor at Citizens Advice Bureau in Taunton. We've got also Mrs. Ania Gendzierska, and she's experienced and passionate about rights at work. And also she's a representative at Yeovil District Hospital for GMB Union Workplace. I think
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
And Tim also kindly joined us tonight. Tim has been organizing and supporting GMB members for, I think, as far as I remember, 4 years. And previous to this, Tim was a local government union representative in Denmark with experience organizing anti-racism campaigns. And before returning to the UK, he came to the UK, sorry, to be an active a member of GMB Union. Is that right, Tim? Or I messed something?
That's pretty spot on, although my personal story is that I've come full circle because I was born in Somerset, went to Denmark and came back again. But other than that, 100% right. That's
great. Okay, so yes, as I've mentioned, Somerset Diverse Communities support different groups in Somerset. We support those communities that decided to come to Somerset, live and work. And we've had those stories where people weren't sure whether they were treated fairly at the workplace or not. They are not sure what rights they have and whether it's, and usually there's some kind of a fear factor. They are not sure whether they should fight for their rights or not. And if they are not sure who could help them, who could clarify what is right, what is wrong. So, okay, let me yes, Karuna, if you don't mind to start your presentation, I think that's going to be the best thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And hi, everyone. I hope this works, and it does. I'll take about maybe 15-20 minutes, and hopefully there'll be some time left for questions at the end. And if there are things that come to your mind afterwards, by all means, get back to us through Michael. That would be helpful. So as Michael said, my name is Karuna. I've been volunteering with Citizens Advice since early part of 2019. I went through a 3 or 4 months training course, which is really quite extensive. But before I started at Citizens Advice, I was a civil engineer working near Bristol. I currently live in Taunton, so I'm really pleased to be able to, provide some help and support through Citizens Advice to the local community. And I really think it's a privilege to be given, actually, to try and help others. So really good. I have to do these slides because I'm on an iPad, it's going to be a bit clunky. So that's me. One of the things to say about Citizens Advice is it's represented in all 4 nations of the United Kingdom. So we have Citizens Advice in England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. So Citizens Advice Somerset is made up of 4 areas. We have one in Taunton, which serves the community locally. We also have Citizens Advice in South Somerset, Sedgemoor, Mendip, and West Somerset. So it covers quite a large, area of Somerset. In terms of what we do, essentially what we do is help people help themselves. That's what it's all about. It's about empowering people so that they can, deal with whatever problem that they come up with. And that's really important. I'll say a little bit about that later. We don't kind of narrow in any way the issues that people come to us with. They could come to us with almost anything, and we will try and help them. That's quite a unique feature. And in terms of scale of Citizens Advice, we have about 2,500 centres. We have about nearly over 20,000 volunteers and about 8,000 staff altogether, basically, in England. Just a little bit about advice. Advice is important, but one thing I would want to say is, in addition to providing advice, we also campaign, help campaign on issues. So what that means is that if we see an issue cropping up regularly, which might be, you've heard about new universal credit, for example, there are lots of issues related to universal credit. So if we observe a pattern of issue coming up, then we would actually try and be proactive by campaigning for change, for example. It could be local, it could be about what maybe Somerset County Council might be doing with respect to social care, or Somerset West and Taunton about housing, or nationally, something like universal credit and how it's developed, how it's accessed, and how it's administered, and also whether it's what problems or issues it might be causing. So in addition to responding to people coming to us, we also try and look at the pattern of issues that are coming our way and see if we can do something proactive. In terms of advice, as the slide shows, we actually provide 3 levels of advice. So the first one is the most helpful one, I think, in terms of volume, is to point people in the right direction so they have information which they can take away, either via email or face-to-face or through a telephone call, and then they can apply that information with some guidance to help resolve their problem or answer their question. The second one is a bit more detailed work, where we would look at more in depth what they're coming with in terms of issue or problem. So we will gather quite a lot of background information. We might do some investigation on their behalf. We might ask them to come back for an interview. If it's a financial issue, we'll get into a little bit more about, or debt issue, a little bit more about the nature of their debt, their scale, and so on. So we will actually give them some specific advice, having understood to a greater degree what their background is, their capacity to address their own problem, and if need be, you know, provide some ongoing support as they move forward. The last level is casework, and this is particularly an issue when it comes to employment, where if people need help and support when they're going to a tribunal, for example, and then we would take on a casework and actually represent them. And so we'll have some, if you like, we have more trained expert volunteers and officers who will do the casework. But most of us, to be honest, deal with information and advice, basically. And often, you know, what it is what people want is, and I have heard this myself, people just want to be able to, if you like, to be listened to, and listened to without any prejudgment. And that's what we do. And often we listen without prejudgment and reflect back. And that in itself brings a great deal of clarity to their situation, which then helps them prioritize and resolve the issues. As I said earlier on, you know, I think we're extremely proud to be able to say that, you know, we can provide advice on almost any topic. We don't discriminate on the basis of what people come up with. And because often people come to us because they have not been able to, if you like, address the complex nature of issues that affects people's lives. So for example, if someone's got a housing problem, often they've got an issue about debt, often they've got issue about employment. So it's not just, you know, problems don't compartmentalize themselves in a neat way. They come together maybe at different times, but they all come to put a pressure on an individual, at which point they feel they need help and advice, and they're not able to get that from those people or organizations, you know, who are there to help, you know, local authorities or government departments or agencies. I think the other thing that's really important to us is the last point, and I was just talking to Michael earlier on about equality, diversity and inclusivity is hugely important to us. And we were just talking about how accessible we are as a service to the BAME community. And maybe that's something we need to think about, you know, at the end of today. So this is some figures about, it's not coming through very well, in 2019-20. In Somerset itself, we've got 28 locations, although we've got 5 centres. We've all got outreach centres as well. And you can see, you know, we've given significant number of issues that have come our way, nearly 80,000 with 22,000 clients. And often there is a pattern to client coming back, you know, especially when it's about housing, debt and so on. Is trying to find sustainable solutions for our clients is the most difficult one, you know, particularly when it comes to housing issues, because you know, if you don't have a home, then that affects an awful lot of other things. Here's a kind of a snapshot of top 10 issues. It's not something to be proud of, but that's what we have to deal with. So in terms of, I mean, benefits actually is far the highest number, you know, around over 30,000 client inquiries. After that, we got debt and money, which is around 18,000. And those are the 2 biggest chunks, if you like, Whether that surprises you or not, I don't know. Whether that's different in your communities, I don't know. But it's something that worth thinking about maybe. And then we have employment, you know, housing, relationships, legal issues. They are around 5,000, you know, so they are smaller, but nevertheless, they are quite significant. I mean, legal issues has to do with court hearings and someone's been given a summons or whatever. They are kind of the next tranche. Consumer issues, this is about dealing with, you know, buying things, buying services. It's interesting, actually, on the consumer side of things, it's building works and buying used cars are the most significant issues that we have to deal with. And in terms of utilities and communication, as you can imagine, it's all about, you know, water, gas, electricity. But if people are struggling with debt and benefits and so on, these are, it doesn't surprise me, they've got then issues about, you know, paying their gas and electricity bills and so on. And I have to say, in this area, both Wessex Water are extremely good in terms of dealing with, you know, clients who are struggling to meet their utility bills and so on. Then we've got health and community care coming up, you know, where people are trying to resolve care issues either for themselves or for their family or friends. Hope that gives you some flavour of what we're dealing with. Nothing these days can be done without mentioning COVID or coronavirus. It has affected the way that, you know, we deliver the service. So we have stopped doing face-to-face interviews. We stopped in March. We restarted the service towards the end of March, where we do everything online with volunteers working from home, and that's working well. We are trying to see if we can have if there's some way of returning to some kind of face-to-face interviews in a limited way for those people who find it really difficult to deal with things online or through Zoom. And also, it wouldn't really surprise you that, you know, I didn't even know the word furlough before COVID came in, that's been quite dominant in terms of the inquiries that we have had. And clearly, you know, going forward with the furlough scheme ending on 31st of October and all the other subsequent economic impact, we expect, you know, kind of the employment related issues to go up quite significantly over the winter period. These are some of the issues that comes up in terms of employment help. I mean, I think one of the things relates to contracts of employment. The number of people who do not have a contract of employment is quite surprisingly high, and that then actually puts them at a disadvantage because you're going by custom and practice, which is open to interpretation, as you can imagine. I mean, ideally, you know, anyone starting at work should receive a contract of employment within a couple of months, and because that's important. Not only does it deal with things like pay and hours at work, but it also deals with what process and procedures the organisation has in place for dealing with disputes or any problems arising. And it's really important that people know that, you know, if there is some illness for the employee or some issues around performance, contracts of employment actually sets out exactly the terms and also scope of their work. That's absolutely crucial. And it prevents abuse as well of the employee by the employer, because, you know, we still hear about, you know, minimum wage issues and so on. So these things have not gone away just because there is a law in the country that says there is a minimum wage. So contract of employment is really important. And as you can see, as an example about, you know, someone being asked to work, you know, huge number of hours, and if you don't have a proper contract of employment, it's sometimes quite difficult to challenge that, because there is that fear of being unfairly dismissed. The other issue is discrimination. The law is very, very clear in this area in terms of, you know, areas of discrimination. So you should not be treated unfairly or differently, actually, either because of your race, your religion, your age, your sex, sexual orientation, disability, or if you belong to the gypsies and travellers community. But you have to remember that this country's employment law means that if you've only been employed for less than 2 years, you don't have any employment rights. However, that doesn't mean that you can be treated unlawfully. So it's really, really important for people to be aware of the, if you like, the discrimination issues that work here. It's not something they need to work out for themselves. It's something they could come to us and say, look, this is what's happening at work. I don't think it's, this is what's happening. What do we think about? I don't think it's fair. Then we can advise them about whether they are being treated unlawfully, whether they've been employed for 2 years or whether they have a contract or not. So it's crucially important that employers, there's an obligation on, obviously, on everyone to act lawfully when it comes to employment on the employer. The other thing that we often get is people losing jobs. And I have to say my own personal experience is that it's really complex and quite an undertaking for an individual to challenge an employee. But nevertheless, you know, it's really important they do come to us, because partly, as I said earlier on, we do undertake campaigns. So if there are a particular sector or an area or even an employer has a history of treating people in an unlawful fashion, then if we can build up a picture, that would help us. Although often we end up advising people. What we do is we advise, we do not tell people what to do. Particularly in certain areas of work, it's a lot easier to go and get another job, or actually get a settlement that perhaps helps the employee. So, you know, we try and help in whatever we can. And wherever possible, as with all these things, we try and get the employer and the employee to talk to each other and see if they can reach an amicable solution. This is a process we go through. You know, we kind of ask a lot of questions, explain to them their rights, find out a bit more about what they've done for themselves, give them some options, and if possible, we will help them decide what to do. And if they really want to take action, either we will take on their case or signpost them to a specialist service that would take them forward. I mean, people like ACAS, Shelter for Housing, ACAS for Employment are really, really helpful and useful organisations to bear in mind. So finally, a couple of more slides. So who do we help? We help anyone. You know, and people who come through our doors represent the whole demographic, socio-demographic sort of spectrum that you can think of. We respond in terms of people's language barriers as well. And and also assist people with certain, disability or learning difficulties. We can be, as I explained earlier on, we no longer provide face-to-face service, but we can be reached on the telephone through advice line. You can look at our information service by going to our website, and also you could come to us and email us as well with your inquiry. We do get a significant amount of emails nowadays, as well as phone calls. I think people are switching. They're getting more used to communicating with us. And this is just the thing about what our clients say, and you can read this for yourself. But as I said earlier on, one of the feedback I've often had, I work on a Thursday, at least I'll get 2 or 3 a day sort of saying, thank you for listening, and thank you for listening without any prejudgment. And I think that's really, really important and valuable, if you like, to our clients. So I will stop there. It's a bit of a quick canter through. I think I might have maybe 2 or 3 minutes. If people have got questions, I'm happy to answer.
That's great, Karuna. Yes, that was really interesting. I was going to ask for that translator, so whether you are able to ask for help in facilitating the communication between you and someone who's not confident with English, but you answer to that question. So I've got the question. I would like to underline. I know the answer, but perhaps for those who never encounter you, never heard of you. Is your service free of charge? Are you confidential? Do they need to book a session with you in advance? How it works like?
Okay, very good question. I should have addressed it. It's quite basic. Absolutely. It is free of charge. It is confidential. They just ring us, turn up, obviously not now, or email us. And then we will sort of take it up from there. If they need an appointment, we'll make an appointment, but we will gather as much information as possible. And I have to say that we're constantly reviewing. I mean, what we do now is different to how we did things 12 months ago. So we're constantly reviewing how we do things. And if we can resolve people's problem as quickly as possible. So we ask questions like their comfort with the use of computers, for example. And again, with language, we'll ask them, there'll be a question about need for interpreter. So when they come to an interview, we can source that. So yeah, absolutely. It's free, confidential, and as much as possible, it would be, I was going to say holistic, but that's not the right word. If someone comes to us with a housing problem because they can't pay their rent, we'll also ask them about their employment issues, any debt issues, and so on. So we try and get as a fuller picture as possible. Hope that's helpful.
Right. And what are the most common problems related to the employment rights?
As I said earlier on, it actually is something about contracts. If you put aside the COVID impact for one moment, it is about issues arising from lack of clarity on their terms of employment. Often it can be about, Tim might have a different view. Often it can be about sort of like terms of employment being changed, but not, over a gradual period of time. So incremental changes, but it's huge. We've had people who were sacked without any notice because they had very informal arrangements. But I would say terms and contracts, and that covers an awful lot of things about how people deal with absence from work, for example, if they've got a grievance. So it's in that area very much. And that's putting COVID to one side,
Thank you, Karuna. I'm not sure whether anyone else has some questions, so please feel more than welcome to ask questions. Is there anyone who would like to ask
Just
for
Tim. Tim's going to ask a difficult question.
I can answer some of the difficult ones, of course, but that's really helpful contribution. Thank you, Karuna, and I agree. Particularly the lack of clarity over contracts, which legally is known as when you've got your terms of reference or statement of particulars, which would include your working hours, for example. In some employers, if you don't have a contract with your set working hours, it can become a very grey area in terms of changing those hours and how much notice or consultation is required to change those working hours. And of course, when you've got workers who have caring responsibilities, for example, at home, and their employer is pressurizing them to change their hours, having that lack of clarity of the black and white statement of particular working examples can cause a lot of problems. And it's the same when it comes to disciplinary and grievance procedures as well. If you don't have a contract, you might not be aware that there's a grievance procedure that you can follow with your employer. If you have a specific complaint, if you're not being treated fairly, for example, there's a grievance procedure that you can follow. If you don't have a contract, it's very difficult unless you have the prior knowledge to know about that.
And just before tonight's event, I've received one email from one gentleman who would like to ask some questions, but due to his pattern of work, he's unable to join us. And he has mentioned that according to his contract, his company has got a duty to reply for his holiday requests in 2 weeks. But he submitted his application, his holiday form, in January, and he's still waiting for the answer. And he's trying to chase that up, and they say, "Oh, you will find out. Soon." But obviously, that person doesn't. He would like to go for Christmas to Romania, and he's not sure whether he's allowed to, whether he can buy the tickets or not, just because of that lack of response from his employer. And what then? How he can challenge this kind of obstacle?
Are you going to go?
Shall I go first on this? Absolutely. Well, in this instance, what the employment law would state is that the employer has to reply within a reasonable amount of time, and clearly that's not reasonable. So if it were a GMB member, for example, I'd be advising our member to make sure that that request is in writing, ideally via email, so we can generate a paper trail, so then we could demonstrate that the time it's taken is completely unreasonable. And then if you can, by all means, ask again politely, but if there's still no response, then that employee has the statutory legal right to raise a grievance that his request hasn't been handled in a reasonable manner. It's a shame that such a simple request would have to resort to raising a grievance. But that would be the way to go about it, because that's completely unreasonable behaviour from the employer.
Yes, by all means. I know Karuna has to go, so thank you, Karuna, for your time. I'm going to share your contact details and contact details to your bureau in Taunton, and hopefully people are going to be more keen to ask for your support. Thank you once again for being with us tonight.
Nice to meet you all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. So Tim, coming back to the subject, please, the mic it's yours and Anna's, if you don't mind. So I will leave it with you. Is that all right?
That's absolutely fine. I'm trying to get the GMB website as a background, but I can't seem to do that, so I'll just continue. So that's absolutely fine. So, Michal, thanks for the invite and thanks for the introduction earlier. What I'd like to set out to do is not really go into employment rights in any great detail, just generally, but more speak about the aims, values, and principles and what GMB stands for. Because, of course, we're experts in the world of work and we deal with employment rights day in, day out, but I want to talk about how we actually support members on a practical basis and how the GMB works. So the GMB Union as an organisation, although I work for the GMB, directly employed by the GMB, it's the members that actually lead the union as an organisation. It's a democratic organisation, and the rules of the union and the direction of the union is set by our members through our democratic structures, and the ultimate structure would be our annual GMB Congress where rules are passed, etc. So although it's really, really important to have this discussion about migrant rights, so I'll start again with the personal story that you gave about my own circumstances, about being a migrant worker. So while I was born and raised in Somerset in my early 20s, I'm not going to tell how long ago that was, I moved to Denmark. And lived and worked out there for several years. So I have some experience of how awkward and at the same time vital and important it is to understand your rights at work in another country, and to understand the systems and processes that exist there. And one of the great things for me is that I became a trade union member in Denmark, and my union embraced me and welcomed me and trained me and supported me. And I take that living experience into how I conduct my work and how I carry myself, and have some empathy and understanding of what other people are going through when I'm working and organising around with our members in workplaces in Somerset. And that's been really, really helpful. And I'm also all too aware, as a UK citizen, the discourse and discussion about migration and migrant workers in particular in the UK. And from a GMB standpoint, we have to say loud and clear that GMB support and stand in solidarity with every single worker, 100%. Some of the stuff that's said in the media is completely unbalanced. A lot of it is disgraceful, and also you hear a lot of racism as well, and we absolutely abhor that and stand in opposition to that. We reject the slogans like British jobs for British workers and any attempt to segregate or isolate migrant workers. Problem clearly isn't migrant workers themselves, but the greedier and exploitative employers that we see out there, the unfair migration laws, and the lack of support for workers and their families. This is where GMB come in, because we want to provide that support and empower people. You know, we believe that migrant workers should have the same rights as all workers, and everyone entitled to be treated with dignity and respect at work. So yes, 100%, we welcome everybody into our union. We campaign for fair rights and equal treatment at work, and celebrate the contribution that migrant workers make to our society. So going back to the discussion about employment rights a little bit, day in, day out, we're trained in all the internal company processes, and we provide our members with support at work and protection at work on a number of issues. And it's really important to have that membership and have that support, because I've seen firsthand how many employers there are out there that take advantage of people who don't know their rights. They lie, they trick people, they don't comply with the basic principles of employment law. So it's really important to have that backing of a trade union that can help you. And it's also important to remember that if there is need for an internal process at work, you can't be represented by an external solicitor. It needs to be either a colleague or a certified trade union representative. So just bear that in mind. Although I'm sure everybody will have really good friends that they can trust at work, it's much, much more powerful and valuable to have a trade union GMB rep who's actually familiar with the processes and understands that. And also another principle of the GMB is that the interests of our members are very different to that of the employers, and we stand full square behind the interests of our members and fight for our members. So we're there to provide that backing. So those processes can be anything from disciplinary processes to challenging deductions of payments that are unlawful, to make sure that people are paid correctly, to indeed campaigning to increase pay and other employee benefits, and making sure that workplaces comply with health and safety and as safe as they can be, and work to eliminate any form of discrimination as well. The primary aim really is to fix things for our member, for the employer while they're in the workplace, to stop things from getting worse, to resolve the issues and make it better for the individual at work. I just want to address a comment that was made about employment law earlier. It was said that if you don't have 2 years service, then you don't have any rights at work. That's not necessarily true. You do have automatic rights at work, the right to your contract, the right to be treated like a direct employee, for example, the right to be paid on time and things like that. I think what was meant that once you have 2 years length of service, you're protected from unfair dismissal at a tribunal. But as I go back to my point, that our objective is to resolve things and make them better in the workplace before they get to that point. But of course, without dwelling on it too much, there are certain things that don't require 2 years service for it to be automatically unfair, i.e. the protected characteristics, for example. So as well as that internal support that the GMB can provide, we also own our own law firm as well. So that provides insurance on a number of things, whether that be your car or your home, just like the GMB is your insurance at work in many ways. But also support a tribunal as well. We would represent you if we needed to lodge a tribunal claim for any reason. Same we would do if there was a personal injury claim. If one of our members were to suffer an accident, we would support them for compensation too. And we also have a learning project within GMB as well that can offer free courses for English, maths, and a range of other vocational type courses as well, whether it be within the care sector, as just one example. So all this individual protection at work is really, really central and important to what we do. But I don't want people to lose sight of the core reason and the core principle of the GMB, which is all about collectivism and solidarity. First and foremost, GMB are an industrial union. And what I mean by that is that workers organising together under GMB with our support and guidance to campaign for better pay, decent pay conditions, and achieving respect at work. And that's achieved by workers being strong together, working together, using their collective voice and their collective strength. Anna, who we've got on here as well, is a really great example of that and what GMB does. Anna works in the NHS. In her workplace, we've built up GMB membership to get proper recognition and respect for our members. Certainly when members are together in a union, management and everybody can see that collective strength, and that is the best prevention in many ways, because managers will see that and think, well, they're really well organised in the union. We've got to do things properly, because if they don't, then the union will challenge us hard on this. So it's really important, and Anna's great. She's confident, she's trained, she knows what she's doing, and our members respect the work that she does as well, which is all about defending members and running campaigns as well to improve pay, and there are many examples of where we've done just that. So over to Anna, and then I'll come back afterwards.
Thank you, Tim. Anna, excuse me, Anna, I think you are muted. You would need to unmute yourself.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Anna. I work for GMB Yeovil District Hospital. Obviously, I come from Poland, where we fight communism, and in here we learn that many people who come from abroad, they need support. When they join Yeovil District Hospital, they work for a private company and also for the hospital, but they often don't know their rights. They don't know they have a rights to flexible working hours, so we help them to achieve the flexible working hours if they have families. Also, we help them for reasonable adjustments. for people who actually have protective characteristic and they cannot wear at this present time specific mask or covering the face with a shield. So we try to achieve now campaign to introduce new type of covering, which help people with heart condition or maybe asthma to come to work and work in environment where they can feel safe and their illness will not make them feel less valued. And also we try to represent people on different aspects of their work. If they are returning to work from sickness, or if they go for formal or informal meetings, we help them to go together with them so they feel secure, of we will represent their rights. If they are I've been representing a woman who was treated without respect and dignity, and she won the case, and the person was dismissed. Apparently it was very complex nature, and also few cases with specific characteristic with a person who, my colleagues actually from GMB, was represented by myself when he was not treated fairly. He have a specific sick note from his doctor to be able to work, but not to do heavy duty. But he was sent on few occasions to very busy department like A&E to cover somebody else's duty. And because the employer didn't give the adjustment, often they recognize they did not treat that person fairly. So he actually works now in different department and is doing less heavy duty due to his health condition and back problem. And often we also receive phone calls from different places, workplaces, like people who work for 0 hours contract or they work in factories. There is a language barrier, of course, and we give support, we advise, but also the people have the choice to make decision if they want to join GMB or different union, and they often stay with us and they trust us because we won many cases in the past, and also we can prove from our previous experience how we support our members, and we have many recommendations. In the hospital, I have a map of different wards where people work and departments, so I know where my members are and they know where I work, so they can always come and ask for help. For example, with specific time off for weddings or other family gathering, for holidays. Of course, we know also now if somebody wants to go abroad, they need to take 14 days time off, and that will be taken from their annual leave. But people often go abroad, and with COVID, many people been not paid when they come back. Where with NHS, if that happened during the time they already been in the other country, they are allowed to be paid 100%. I just have a member who come back from Poland, but she was in the country, in Poland, at the time where during her week, the procedure been added. So she is paid 100%, and she was 14 days now at home after she come back. So things like that, our members, I think they feel very strong to contact us, to ask for advice. And we always try to show them what we can do in the best interest for our members. And also if there is a case where we know we cannot win, we are open with them, we say the truth. Or if they come to us and it's very late issue, which happens sometimes before. So if they don't have a record, it's very hard to win this kind of cases.
Anna, may I ask a question? So, do you support only the members of GMB, or how it works? Or do you are open for any workers?
I receive lots of calls and recommendations from, even from Facebook, from different kind of workplaces, and often people ask me if I can help directly, but I always send them to our branch, to team, because often there are people from baking factories in Weston-super-Mare, Bristol, Somerset, North Somerset, Dover, other places really, all around England, but most likely in our region.
Right, but do they need to be a member then? Do they need to
yes,
join?
they need to be a member, a minimum 6 months, because in the past people join in a week time. They have the membership and they expect to be represented. So I always explain they need to be a members minimum 6 months, and we can represent them, but they need to prove they are sensible and they are serious. Not like they will join, they will have the representation and then they will leave.
Okay, and what do you mean by joining you and showing that they are sensible? What they need to do during that 6 months? Do they need to attend any meetings, or they need to present?
They need to join our union by signing online, or they can fill a form, and we can see if they have a membership number and how long they are members, because we also have a lawyer who can represent them if the case goes to tribunal, or if it's more complex case where they can be awarded some kind of sum of money if the employer wasn't treated them fairly or they were dismissed. So it's many different cases when we represent people, but many people who don't speak English as a first language, they don't know the law, and they are very scared to ask for help. So they come mostly the last minute when they need to be represented at unfair dismissal or other very complex issues where they've been discriminated. Recently, I heard a case. There was a lady who worked 0 hours contract. She was called during her work to her boss office, and she was informed the boss heard from another worker. She was looking and applying for different jobs. So the company doesn't need people like her, and she should take her clothes and her belongings in 30 minutes and leave the company. There was also a case of a person who was working nights and wants to work days, or the other way around, but this person wasn't given the opportunity. So many different work problems of sometimes very complex nature.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
Michal, just to just to take on the point around the 6-month membership. Well, provided you're a member, we will support you 100%. Now, there are certain elements of membership take 6 months, but for the most part, so long as you're a member, then we will provide you with cover immediately. It's just that when people join with an existing issue, it's very limited as to what Anna said, because things are quite often ongoing, and certain things may not be undone. And in terms of capacity, we could only provide telephone advice. But for the vast majority of issues, so long as you're a member before anything happens, then we can offer that protection. But yes, we would only support GMB members, albeit non-members in workplaces do generally benefit from the work that we do, especially around pay increases, for example. But by the same token, by being a member of the GMB, you help to build our strength and influence. And that's certainly helped put pressure on employers, and in the NHS being a really, really good example. So as Anna mentioned, there is a firm operating that aren't on the same terms and conditions as NHS staff, but we campaigned at the start of COVID to make sure that they get full pay from day one. And we've also secured back pay, for example, and having more members involved and participating in our democracy helps us to achieve more things. So we certainly encourage membership, and this is a really good example of what a GMB presence in the workplace can achieve. And it's important to remember, even though we just gave a couple of examples of the NHS, we're also a general union, so you can be a member no matter where you work, whether that be in public services, local government, for example, care homes, or whether that be in manufacturing or private commercial firms. We're a general union, so you can join to have that protection at work. And you know, if you come to us with if you're a member and you come to us with a problem, we won't push you aside. We'll definitely help you out. And you know, and to bear in mind, and within the context of society and the economy as it is now, you know, it's very, very tough out there in terms of employment, but also the way society is run as well. When, let's face it, we live in a society where the richest 100 people have the combined wealth of the bottom 20 million people. You know, so unions need to exist to win that balance back and to give strength to working people. And that's exactly what we do. We work for fairness, justice, and decent pay. And we listen to our members, and we think about what they're saying. We listen to their opinions, and we understand that we need to remain active in workplaces and continually run campaigns, whether that be full sick pay, like I just mentioned, and in other care homes, or whether that be campaigning to fight for jobs. We've had places that have been actually closed down, and we've lobbied the government to have them reopened. For example, there's a shipyard in North Devon where we've achieved that and secured all these jobs and won all these jobs back, whether it be fighting, campaigning for pay rises, etc., and to improve people's life and work-life balance. Because when you consider how much time people spend at work and how often the case people have such little control, we need to redress that balance and even it out a bit and give people confidence, give people power at work. So yes, GMB is there to support you. And remember that by being a member of GMB, you're very welcome to get involved in our campaigns, to become a rep, to get involved in the work that we do, whether that be about different ethnic minority groups, for example, disabled members, for example, you know, and the basic principle remains: together we're stronger and safer at work.
That's great, Tim. Thank you very much. And I've got just last question. Oh, Chris, please.
Yeah, Tim, I'm not clear whether, if you're just, say you're an individual in a small firm where the GMB is not so far represented, you're an individual, but you want to become a member of the GMB, is that possible? And also, second question, does the employer ever have a right to refuse contact between an employee and the union?
Thank you, Chris. So everyone has the fundamental human right to join a union, and everybody has the fundamental statutory right to be represented by one if they need a union supporting them at work. So if you're one individual in a workplace, then we will support you, absolutely. But our aim then would be to build the membership up so we can achieve recognition and achieve influence in that workplace.
Right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the employment rights, this subject is so deep that we could talk for hours. But as I've mentioned, our initial plan was to finish by 7 o'clock. But I would like to take the advantage that Hidden Voices are with us tonight. And their mission, it's so important because of they support the victims of, well, I do believe they will say what they do, but it's so related to our subject to today, and people are coming to other countries because of they believe that they will find a better job and they're going to be able to build a better life, but it's not always the case. Hello, Xian.
Hi, Mikhail. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good to see you. Yeah, we're from Hidden Voices, Bridgewater. Our aim predominantly has been to raise awareness of modern slavery, human trafficking and exploitation in the community. That has grown over the last 18 months. And we have trained up more members, and we are sort of joining forces with members that we have across Somerset. And we're now going to be very shortly launching a scheme which is going to be Hidden Voices Somerset Victim Support. As the name would suggest, it is to take referrals of victims that have been either trafficked, held in modern slavery or exploitation across the Somerset area, and we will obviously help them out of that situation with emergency safe accommodation, and obviously then find a pathway for them to find a permanent safe home and legal job, you know, a reputable job and unacceptable accommodation. There have been several instances, as you will all know, across Somerset over the last sort of 18 months or so. And this is just the work that we have done so far, and the information that we've had, and the victims that we have helped certainly just show that it is something that is happening more than anyone would think in our area.
Yeah, that's the thing. That is quite common conception, you know, for those who perhaps don't have had a chance to meet migrant workers. They may say, "Oh, Somerset is quite a peaceful place, you know, quite calm." But is that true?
No, there's a huge problem, particularly across the Sedgemoor area and the immediate surrounding areas of Sedgemoor. We're a very big rural community, so one of the biggest places that it happens is in agriculture, farm workers. We have recently launched, the Clear Initiative launched a farm workers welfare app, which is really good. It's not only for the workers, but it's for the farm owners as well. Sometimes farmers can be duped into employing people that aren't, and they will then pay who they think is an agent, but the money won't be going to the workers, and the workers will be housed in poor accommodation. So sometimes the farmers themselves can be duped, and the Farm Workers Welfare app actually gives information in, I think, 7 different languages as well. So it is really good. If you know people that are working in the sort of agricultural food processing as well, industry, then that app is really good because it's in 7 different languages. County lines is another thing that comes under modern slavery, and that is growing. Certainly over the last 6 months, we've seen great, great evidence that the county lines is getting bigger, and people are being exploited in food processing factories as well, construction. It is rife, it is everywhere, and people think it doesn't happen in my town. Unfortunately, it does, and I suspect that unless you live, unless you live miles from anywhere, then one of your neighbours, one of the houses, will actually be, will actually have some involvement with modern slavery.
Wow. Who would thought? But I do believe that this problem is even more complex, because if we are talking about migrant workers, let's say from Poland, from Romania, it's a matter of that confidence, language skills, if you like, and the knowledge about the system and rights in general. But in terms of the people that you try to support, some of them, a part of them, they may be aware that they came to the UK and the way how they came, or they say it's illegal. So if they are mistreated, if there's some exploitation, are they still able to find some support?
The general idea with our victim support is we will try and find a pathway to get them legal status or get them returned to the country of their origin, if that's their choice. We have a lot of paths we can go down through the national referral mechanism as well, if they want that. The general idea is to just try and get them out of where they are and get them comfortable and safe and fed, and then we can look at where we're going to go. And what we're looking for, we're actually looking for volunteers who can help us with this situation.
Okay, so if someone would like to support you or find out a little bit more about what you do, where they can find more information about your service?
I can drop you an email with some information, Mikael. I mean, obviously, you know, a little bit about Hidden Voices, and the work we've done within the community predominantly has been raising awareness. And we encourage people, anyone that thinks something doesn't look right, if something doesn't look right, doesn't feel right, then normally it's not right, and you need to sort of report it to the relevant authorities. With the project that's just starting now, we will take referrals from many different places. So it could be from yourself with your sort of Somerset communities thing. You could be made aware of someone. It could be from one of the union people, they could be made aware of someone, or from obviously the GLAA, the National Victim Support, the police, local authorities. They will refer to us, and then obviously we will endeavour to help that victim. A lot of people, you mentioned about people coming here and maybe even here illegally. What often happens is that people are in dire circumstances, and that can be either in their home country or even in this country. They may be English nationals. In fact, the statistics do show that the majority of victims that are exploited in the UK are actually UK citizens. And for whatever reason, they will be promised somewhere to live, a job, a better life, and that doesn't materialize. They might have mental health issues, they might have drug issues, they might be homeless. Homeless are often targeted. You know, I've got somewhere for you to live and I've got a job for you. And the somewhere to live might be a 3-bedroomed house with 15 mattresses around it in a house that really isn't habitable at all. And they will be sent to different places to work, but they won't get paid, they'll be mistreated, they'll be abused. And they see no way out of it. They'll be completely controlled. Quite often, they'll be given alcohol and drugs, and their habit will be fed so that they can then control them. And they, you know, some of the situations that we've come across have been unbelievable, really, the way people have been treated. So our work is sort of twofold. It's raising awareness, and we do a lot of work giving presentations to community groups, unions, things like that, about the facts about modern slavery and how to spot it and what to do. And then obviously the project that we're starting now is actually about looking after victims that are referred to us. I will send you some information about the project, and I will also, if you want to send the my details to anyone that perhaps would be interested in having a presentation about modern slavery so that they just know more about it, then I will send you obviously my details, and you can feel free to pass that on.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. I'm not sure if anyone else has got some questions. I do believe Fiona, yes. I do apologize. You were trying to ask a question earlier on. Hello, Fiona.
Hello, everybody. Yes, I run a project called New Horizons Somerset based in Wellington, Somerset. And in our membership, we have quite a few people that have been recruited from different parts of the world. We have a huge hospital in Wellington that is a mental health institution that deals with people who are suffering mental health issues through the penal system. And when I moved down to Wellington about 15 years ago, there was very hardly people of other races in Wellington. And I've noticed in the last 2 years or so, there's been quite a lot of people from different communities moving into Wellington, most of them working for Elysium, which is the hospital I'm talking about. And the issue about people not respecting people's rights. Most of these people, like for example, my neighbor who just moved in next door to me about 6 months ago, is from Jamaica. She was recruited from Jamaica specifically to work with this company. It's a private company, so they don't come under NHS protections. She's recruited from Jamaica, and she's tied down to a contract for 3 years because the company paid for her fare to come, and they also paid her deposit for her accommodation. So she's tied down to this contract for 3 years to this company. And speaking to her in a way, because she is earning a lot less than, she's a qualified nurse, qualified registered nurse, she's earning a lot less than what a qualified registered nurse would earn in the normal scope of things. And in a way, would you classify that as modern day slavery? Because she's tied down for 3 years for this contract. She can't leave the employer because the employer has tied her down for 3 years. If she does leave, then she has to pay back her fare and her accommodation that they've paid for. So in a way, I'm seeing quite a lot of these people that are involved in this Elysium company that are recruited from all over the world, from India, Jamaica, from Nigeria, who are coming to me for advice and saying, Fiona, do you think that I'm tied down for 3 years for this contract? I can't leave the employer because otherwise I have to pay back my fare and all the other bits and pieces that they have tied themselves into. So I'm just looking for advice. Can they join a union? Where do I signpost them to?
Is it a UK-based company?
It is a UK-based company, yes.
Thank you.
And they're recruiting now people from all over the world. The people who are in the house next door to me, I think the house is rented, it's a private rented property, and I think rent the house for their employees. So the people who were renting the house before Petra moved in were from Nigeria. They were mental health nurses, qualified mental health nurses, and they were recruited straight from Nigeria. And there was about 5 of them in the house. It's a 3-bedroomed house, and they moved out and they've got themselves another property. But Petra's moved in, working for the same company, but they're tied down to the contract. So when they recruit them from Nigeria, India, wherever they're recruiting them from, they are tied down to a 3-year contract. So the company pay for their fare to come, and they find them accommodation, but they underpay them. So Petra, for example, is a qualified registered nurse from Jamaica. She's got 20 years experience, but she's tied down to a 3-year contract with this particular company. She can't move from them because otherwise if she moves, she has to pay back her fare and the accommodation. So this is going on in Somerset. So I'm just wondering where I go to signpost them.
I think if in itself, it may not be a case of exploitation. It depends on how much she's getting paid.
Yeah.
And I mean, is the accommodation good accommodation?
It's fair enough accommodation. I mean,
it's okay.
It's okay. It's habitable. It's not
like mouldy and
no,
like, you know,
no.
overcrowded and things like that. Okay.
No.
And her rate of pay, do you know what her rate of pay is?
Well, she's getting paid a lot less than what her qualification would suggest. So Petra, she says she's getting paid about £12 an hour for a qualified registered nurse.
Right.
And if you look at the rate of pay for a qualified registered nurse, mental health nurse working for the NHS, I think they earn about 18 to £20 an hour. And I take it that maybe they have factored in the fact that she's got to pay back her fare and they paid her deposit for her accommodation. I take that on board. But the fact that she's tied into this company for 3 years, and she does leave the company, then she's got to pay back all that money back to them before she finds another employer, for example.
It's difficult because, I mean, there are instances of people being brought to this country and they're sort of saying, you know, we'll pay your fare, we'll pay your accommodation, and we'll find you a job. But the job isn't a genuine job. The accommodation is not fit for humans to live in.
Yeah, this is a genuine job, and it is, yeah, the accommodation,
you know, and they never actually get paid.
Yeah.
and this doesn't sound quite like that, but
No.
what it does concern me is there have been instances within health authorities whereby people have been recruited from different countries, different areas,
Yeah.
and in fact, quite often there is something that has come to light is that sometimes that there is sort of false identification and things like that. Quite often, if you're in a hospital, the person that you're looking at that has the the proper identification badge isn't the person you're looking at, because one badge that goes around. So I mean, if you have any real concerns, then obviously you can raise it with several, you could raise it with the Modern Slavery Helpline. You could, or Tim from the union may want to comment.
Yeah, I don't think it's I wouldn't so far call it as slavery, because I think when they recruit them, they know they're going to be tied down in this contract for 3 years. So they come knowing that they're going to be tied down in the contract for 3 years. My concern was about them getting their value for money. So for example, a registered nurse, she's being underpaid. And then she sees that actually as a registered nurse, I could go to work for Musgrove Hospital, for example, and I could get twice the amount of money I'm paying now. And then she's tied down to the contract that she's in now. If she is happy to pay back the fare, then that's fine. But I think there's a kind of exploitation happening. It's not, I wouldn't call it as a modern day slavery, but there's a kind of exploitation happening.
We kind of class modern slavery and exploitation under the same umbrella. I mean, there are lots of things that are more exploitation rather than modern slavery, but there's a very fine line. Yeah, and also issues about their contracts and all the kind of things that they're coming to me for advice when I need to signpost them either to CAB. Would CAB be able to represent them? If, for example, Pet was saying she wants to go home to Jamaica, she's got to ask for her fare because she can't afford all her wages now are going to pay for her accommodation and her food. She hasn't got anything left to go home to Jamaica for Christmas for. It's little things like that that are building up that I am just aware of. Mikhail, if I drop you an email a bit later on with an alternative email address as opposed to my sort of private one, then perhaps you could share it with Fiona.
Oh, yes,
and then if you get in touch with me, and then we can maybe look at this a little bit more.
That's great, thank you. Okay, I'm not sure whether Tim, would you like to add something?
Yeah, a couple of things. So thanks very much first of all, Sian. I've got this document at the GMB. We've picked this up from Bridgewater
This one
Trade
I prepared earlier.
Yes, really good.
Were you at the TUC? Were you at when we went, because we did a presentation at the Trades Unions Council's a little while ago.
Yeah, that's right. So we've taken some other branch meetings and trades councils. It's fantastic work that you do, and the important thing to the vital thing to remember is what's going on in this black economy is often in workplaces where there's no trade union presence, because the work tends to be quite what do we say, there's a high turnover of staff. There's kind of minimal regulation of these kind of sectors of the economy, but it's taking place in our communities. So making sure that people know how to spot the signs and what to look out for is absolutely brilliant. So we're carrying forward the work and sharing this wherever we go. So really good stuff. In terms of that facility in Wellington, it sounds to me like the staff are directly employed with fixed term employment contracts, and it sounds like the whole travel and accommodation is part of the overall employment package. But I do agree with Fiona that that they're underpaid for the skill and ability of these staff. So this is just another example of the employer taking advantage of people and driving down wages. Obviously, they're actively recruiting in countries where people are relatively poorer off, and the company's being very, very opportunist about it. So by all means, you know, everybody has the right to join a trade union, and the GMB will look at those contracts and to scrutinise what's going on over there, definitely. And if we think it's out of line, then we can perhaps talk to the commissioning client, which would presumably be the Somerset Clinical Commissioning Group or County Council. So we could definitely scrutinise that and take a look and provide support where it's needed.
What you said about the trade unions is very good, and there's a very large civil engineering site in Somerset at the moment, and we actually know somebody that actually is involved on the health and safety on that, and he actually does say to as many people as possible that, you know, if they've got a gripe because they're not getting paid as much as the man next door to them because they're still getting paid in sort of Bulgarian money or whatever, you know, he says to them, join the union because, you know, we can sort of take it up for you. So I think obviously, especially at this day and age where exploitation is certainly rife throughout the country, I think the unions can do a really good job. And I think that the other good thing as well is, I think the other main thing is we need to get employers to be more aware, so that if they are if somebody is coming in to work for them and they're coming from an agency that's not, you know, it's not per temps, it's not your normal sort of high street agencies, that they actually need to speak to the people as well, rather than take their word for it, that you know, they need to ask questions about sort of their housing, their welfare. I mean, they have a duty of care for their employers, and they can't necessarily take everything that the man from the agency says is true. So I think we need companies to take more control, you know, a little bit more, show more of an interest in their employees, whether they're employed directly or through agencies.
Right, yes. Okay, guys, I'm aware of the time. I really regret, because it's a very important subject, and we could talk for hours, and, you know, if we would take one case, and we could talk about one case for the rest of the evening, but the aim of today's meeting was to let those people know about your services, about available support, and that they have some rights, and if they are not sure what rights they have, they can always approach you and ask for some kind of support. They can talk to Karuna, or they can join trade unions, or they can ask Xian for support if they think that they became modern slavery victims. So that's the most important thing for tonight. But I'm going to email you shortly, but I would like to find out what would you like to see in the future, whether there are any other fields that we should cover, that perhaps there's an elephant in the room that we all the time miss, because of to our knowledge, employment, housing, mental health, and the language barrier, they're the main issues for the time being for the BAME communities, due to the cultural differences. But if there's anything else that we could cover, by all means, please do not hesitate to contact me. Yes, Xian.
Can I just ask, Mikhail, part of the project that we're just launching, we are still trying to recruit some more volunteers. We've done volunteer training with the initial volunteers. If I send you some information, could you share that on through your sort of community? And if anybody is interested, then obviously they can get in touch. And one of the things that we are working with Diversity Voice on this as well, but one of the things that would be useful is anyone else that can perhaps translate as well. So lots of volunteer roles, and we're not asking anyone to give up a huge amount of time, but if they can spare half a day a week or be on call for translation via a phone or something, that would be really helpful. So if I send you the information, perhaps you could share that through your media channels.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to say something or ask an additional question?
I think for me, Mikhail, this is about this increase in companies, private companies, who are recruiting from different parts of the world, and as I said before, it's exploiting the people that they are recruiting from different parts of the world. And those people, and I've noticed in Wellington, where I live, that there is a lot of faces, and 90, I would say about 80% of them are working for them. And for me, it's about protecting those people that are not being exploited. Maybe exploitation is a bit of a big word, or modern slavery, but how do we inform those people of their rights and their employment rights? Like, for example, with my neighbor Petra, who wants to go home for Jamaica, and also I spoke to you, Mikhail, about a lady who was in Petra's house before, who wanted to bring her children. So she got recruited, and she was promised that within a year's time, if you fulfill your contract within a year's time, you will then bring your children. And because of COVID, she can't bring her children now. And the consequences of that is that she met me in the supermarket, and she's suffering from depression because she's missing her children. She's on her own. So there's lots of issues that are linked to employment that we need to be aware of in the coming months or years. People who are away from home, living on their own, and the issues of mental health issues, of being tied down to this 3-year contract where she feels she can't leave the employment because the consequences of her children coming. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah, of course, by all means. I do believe that the employment rights and the employment issue in general, for those people who decided to go to other country, the employment rights is like an umbrella. And under that umbrella, you've got all other issues related to the subject, because the main aim was to get that employment in the new country, but then they need to face new challenges, more personal challenges, perhaps challenges that they never thought that they would face in the future.
Yeah,
I think if you go onto the GLAA website, you can download workers' rights in several different languages. That's a really useful place to go. You can download the workers' rights in they've got several languages on there, so hopefully you would find one that is relevant to the people that you're concerned about.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, guys, so thank you very much for being with us. I hope I will see your faces in near future, and we're going to be able to organize other webinars, or you will join us during our multicultural events. But also, if you've got any ideas or suggestions, or you would like to cooperate with us or co-organize something in the future, we are more than welcome to do so. So please do not hesitate to contact us. Unfortunately, the second wave is on its way. We know that COVID-19, it's not only about health, that other layers that perhaps will affect all of us in the future. So there's going to be a new phase of challenges, if you like, in the future. So we do believe we would need to gather all together once again and discuss what we can do in order to build a better future for other generations and people who are living in Somerset right now. So yes, thank you very much and good night.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care. Have a lovely night. Evening. Bye.
Good night, all. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.